streaming.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is eBizChat, where it is all about business. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by Dr. Susan Nash. Hey, Susan, how are you?
Great. I had some interesting meetings today and some new thoughts about geothermal.
Okay, that's good. Upper volume. That's good. Geothermal is definitely interesting. Well, there's a lot to talk about there. Here we go. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation, Digital Learning, Corporate Video, Learning Design, and Management Consulting. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And we are back. Susan, when you mentioned pre-show that geothermal was the topic of the day, that's real interesting because it's only now starting to get into people's frontal lobes where they're going, geothermal. And we talked about, I couldn't find a clip of showing a movie that I think we both saw years ago. It was called Forbidden Planet, and that whole planet was basically run by geothermal energy and the collective intelligence of the Krell Empire. It was a great science fiction movie from, I think it was the late 50s, but it was ahead of its time, and that whole planet oscillated with geothermal energy. And think of it, that was 70 years ago almost, or 60-something years ago, and now we're literally there.
Well, I think the Romans really, they were converting it into some other kind of energy like electricity. When you think about it, the Romans have had geothermal years ago, and then also, obviously, like one of the leaders in this kind of volcanic geothermal. Then there are places like Peppermill casinos, and I haven't been to Peppermill. I remember when it was a restaurant, but it was in Reno, and that supposedly is all geothermal. So, I mean, it's been a long time, but there are certain initiatives that are kind of taking off that people are looking at it in a different way.
Where do you think geothermal is going?
Well, okay, so the University of Oklahoma has a geothermal consortium, and what they've done is they've pulled oil and gas wells that have depleted, but they are still in good shape, so they have good borehole integrity, and they've converted them into geothermal wells, not to create electricity, but to use for heating schools and buildings. So that they managed to do like 4 of those. Now, I will say it's expensive, so I don't know what the economics are with it. I mean, I know they're not paying for themselves, but it's kind of a proof of concept. But I think it's people are trying to like repurpose. Then it's going also into different kinds of sedimentary. But then, okay, remember the geothermal the geothermal plant that was on the big island of Hawaii, and then there was the eruption in Kilauea, and it sort of like lava ate up the plant. I remember watching that going, wow. Well, anyway, that didn't discourage anybody. It's been rebuilt. It's not bigger.
So for those who don't know, what exactly is geothermal energy?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. Okay, so geothermal energy, it kind of comes in 2 forms. There's a form that like you think about lava and the molten lava that's underneath the Earth's crust. Well, in some places it comes up to the Earth's crust, and and then other places it comes very close to it because there are rift zones where the plates are rifting apart. And so, like, for example, in Iceland, what they do is they take seawater and they just spray the water, pump the water into like the and it makes kind of instant steam. So they use that steam to both directly heat the the plants or the houses and things, and then they also use it for moving turbines and making electricity. And it made so much cheap electricity that Iceland used to have an aluminum
Mm-hmm.
foundry because they could do it. It was affordable.
Interesting. Now, when you say it's affordable, what makes geothermal more affordable than having other forms of power?
Well, if it's surface and you've got a lot of water and you've got infrastructure, and then it's affordable because it's like all you have to do is like kind of build the infrastructure, the turbines, and you get this generation of electricity without much expenditure of cash resources. Now, but a different concept is when it's sedimentary, and so you have to drill down through
Mm-hmm.
sediments, and there's a geothermal gradient, so it's just slightly warmer. Then it's not hot enough to create electricity, to turn turbines or create electricity. You kind of just use it for direct heat for
Mm-hmm.
um, like buildings, and it's direct heat. And I mean, that sounds good, but it can be pretty expensive because there's a lot of corrosion and scale with this water, so you have to treat it. And then because it has so many underground pipes and things like that, if the pipes go bad,
Mm.
um, repairs are expensive. There's a new development in Austin, Texas, called Whisper, and they've made a whole residential area where it's geothermal. And so they're pumping the water through, and they claim that we have all low density polyethylene flexible pipes that will last 50 years. Well, maybe the pipes will, but my question is, what happens at the joints? So, I mean, those are all sorts of like, yeah, heat is everywhere, but there are some drawbacks.
Now, as far as the heat, is water always required?
Yes, I think I can't try to think of some time it wouldn't be. Yes, and you're pointing out a big issue.
So with the water, so you're building where there's obviously some running water or some water that is heated up geothermically and then brought to the surface, or at least the energy or the heat is brought up to the surface, correct?
Yes, or they can create these underground long pipelines where it goes
Mm.
the pipes to the level where it's hot. Then you just pour in and you inject in the water, and then you let it heat up, and then it comes back out and either heats your home or building or turns turbines. But the other thing too is that there's such a thing as entropy,
Mm. Right.
and it cools off. Your geothermal resource will eventually cool down, and um, even if you're talking about volcanic or the mantle, I mean, your event. I mean, it can lithify and turn into rock, even if you have to continue to drill or find where it's still hot.
Hmm. So it's tricky.
Very
So what makes that a good source of energy, at least for common use?
well, according to Project Inner Space, and they're a very visionary organization, and they are to convert um, companies have geothermal go everywhere,
Hmm.
and they think that it's just a matter of overcoming technical barriers. That right now it's not really economical. If you can just make it more efficient, and you can find the best prospects for the geothermal, it would work.
So, for example, as I'm sitting here, an ex-California resident, you really wouldn't use geothermal very much in a very seismically active area, would you?
Well, ironically, the best geothermal usually is in a seismically active area
Right.
because of volcanoes. So, like, I don't know if you've ever been to Napa and the geysers. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's a classic geothermal location.
Okay. And they have lots of earthquakes up there.
They certainly do. They do. Yeah, but
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, the reason I
so
said that is I was thinking of the pipes and all the things that go to carry the energy. That's usually what gets damaged or could get damaged.
yeah, and then there's also the argument that if you're not careful, you can actually trigger
Mm.
earthquake, which has happened with geothermal. I think it happened in South Korea.
Interesting. So that would be almost like, well, it's different from fracking, but, or is it? Because water still is involved in moving and changing.
It's essentially the same issue as injecting water,
Right.
produced water. Or yeah, because you're still injecting in, and you're still potentially lubricating faults. But where the now some of the most well developed geothermal resources are actually in Nevada,
Hmm.
and the University of Nevada at Reno has an incredibly wonderful program in geothermal research, and they also in Utah have something called Project Forge, which is a government um, energy funded project to study geothermal in the basin and range area. I don't know if it extends into Idaho, but I know that they've been doing a lot in Nevada and Utah.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. Obviously, this is material that's not that old yet in terms of common use or anything else. What do you see as a timeline for geothermal becoming just normal, another form of energy?
Well, I can tell you what project Interspace's timeline is in 18 months. They want to have the entire world database of a geothermal characterization so that
Hmm.
if you're interested in looking to see if your city, oh, like say Paris has parts of Paris, they have these geothermal. Now, if your city has some kind of natural, high quality geothermal resource,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's they want to you to be able to find it quickly, and then they also want to have in after that to put into to motion um, at least 20 projects where they're drilling for geothermal using all the different well lessons learned from mining and oil and gas to start working with developing the infrastructure, which I think is it sounds good. It's going to be a lot harder than it seems because the infrastructure for geothermal, if you want to have it on a global level, it's going to be different than say like gas pipelines or whatever. So you're going to have to reconfigure, rethink a lot of things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting project, especially like you said, going small scale. I could see it going large scale. That's going to be a big project.
I'm with you. I think in cases like Iceland and um,
A volcanic island, yes.
yeah, volcanic islands, like it's perfect. Like Hawaii, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. I mean, it's absolutely probably the only thing that makes the most sense.
Now think about
Uh,
the people who move to Big Island in Hawaii, and they actually build their houses on the volcano.
I
And
know.
and you just shake your head and go, one, why are they allowed to? And two, every time there's a big lava flow or something, they lose their houses. They can't even get insurance in these houses. Do you think the same risks would happen with geothermal, which it's the same kind of energy per se, um, that if people build too close to the thermal source, uh-oh.
I think it depends on what kind of thermal source you have. If it's like
Yeah,
from deep injection wells, etc.,
yeah.
and they made sure that there's not going to be any induced seismicity, I think that people would be happy to do it. What I like about geothermal is that in theory you can be close to your source of energy,
Hmm.
as opposed to say a wind farm where most of the electricity generated is going can be lost
Right.
across the transmission lines.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I really enjoy all these initiatives by our governments and stuff saying by 2030 there will be no more cars. We're going to get the power. Yeah, we're going to get the power to fuel everything, because there's no way we could actually charge that many cars through normal conventional means right now, or just normal plugging into walls. We can't generate that kind of power. Not now. I don't think we'll be able to do it in another 7 or 10 years either. That's a lot of power.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind is that Asia, Asian countries, Asia Pacific, they are not, we talked about this before, they're not eliminating any kind of power or energy. And in fact, China announced to build 47 more nuclear reactors for, I think, to be done in 10 years. And India is tripling their number of nuclear reactors. And then they also are going with thermal, also going with what's the other one that they're really pursuing?
Was it natural gas? Is that what you said?
Natural gas, yes. And they're importing like LNG, things like that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I always thought growing up, and I started studying a little bit of. I was a chemical engineering major for quite a while, and I was very interested in nuclear at the time. And everybody was thinking nuclear is going to be really big. It's great. It's this, and then you have one meltdown, and that's the end of it. Nobody wants to do nuclear anymore. It's changed. I mean, if you look at nuclear plants today, they're much cleaner, much safer than they used to be. When we do have accidents, these are very old plants usually, extremely old. These are probably from the maybe late 50s, 60s. And a lot has changed in all those many years, the 50, 60 years that they've been built. Where do you think nuclear lies in all of this?
Well, I know we're doing research in nuclear, and I think the smaller, more efficient plants seem to be better that do not produce type of waste. But my question would be like, where are they going to get all the enriched uranium? I mean, where are they going to get it?
Yeah,
that's a challenge.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. They've talked about sending it into space, sending it here, doing this. There are some, I don't know if it was Russia or some other countries, I'm trying to remember who it was, that have absolutely gorgeous facilities to save the waste. Very, very cleanly done underground. They put them in. It was pretty interesting. I think it was a Russian plant. It was actually really interesting, very modern. I think I saw it on Discovery once. And I was going, that's fascinating what they're building. They're football-size fields or bigger that just store everything very neatly. And it goes underground, and they have an easy capacity to do that. So it's, of course, you'll run out of space eventually, or you'll probably have to expand. And I can't see us littering space, but I could see us doing that. So what do you do with it? I don't know.
I think before that, we have to recycle. Just like I was just listening to a thing about urban mining. Now, I think that there's something unethical about sending children in to work on garbage.
Have you heard about that?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
If we can recycle in a positive way, you recycle the spent fuel rods. Recycle. I mean, without killing, without harming people,
right,
or the environment.
Yeah, it's insane. They're estimating about 100,000 children around the country, if not more, are working in jobs just like that and other dangerous jobs. These are 9 to 15, 16-year-olds. Mostly illegal immigrants that have been ushered into the country and immediately put into a slave labor program. You gotta just love people sometimes.
It's very upsetting.
Yeah. So very fascinating. In fact, there was articles on CBS, on the news, and they're going after Biden right now because they're allowing everybody in, and they don't know where anybody. They don't even care where people are going. 5 people got demoted in their positions who were in charge of taking care of children's safety when they come in, because supposedly And so there's a big mess going on with that. It's just typical. The companies doing this were enormous, multi-billion-dollar worldwide companies, and you just go, yeah, good job. Good job.
Well, I know that one time years ago I was involved in continuing education for, it was like corrections. A University of Oklahoma had a program, so I ended up taking tours and meeting private prisons,
Hmm.
and I was shocked at how large those companies are that run private prisons, and I'm
They're
sure
very
that the same
large.
people do the whatever those facilities are for people who are entering the United States. But
Hmm.
I would ask a question: why are the children unaccompanied? I mean, that's the question I haven't heard anybody answer.
Well, I think that's the excuse. It's not necessarily that they run a company, but they send them up that way. They
Why?
send, I think, for exactly the purposes they're used for. They're used in prostitution. They're used in any kind of dirty or unsafe labor. They're creating a substrata of society that has no rights, no this, no that. They're invisible. They don't even know where most of them are.
That's so upsetting.
It's sick. It's unfortunately it just shows that we just don't evolve as quickly as our technology does. We're not that much different as humans from what we were 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. We're just better equipped.
I would argue that in some ways we have less compassion.
You're probably right. You're probably right. Because now it's too easy to make a bad decision. You have tech right behind you. Yeah, sure, go ahead and do it.
And you don't have to feel the consequences.
Yeah. Well, you just kind of shake your head. Look what's happening in California now. They want to pass laws to get rid of pedophile laws. Oh no, pedophiles are okay. They're good because everybody should have their own kid and do whatever they want with them. And it's just like, hello, what planet are we on? It's just insane.
That's beyond reprehensible.
Yeah. And of course that old saying, as California goes, so does everyone else. Well, that's not a good thing. Not in those kind of things. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't think it's gonna last long.
No, and I think the thing to me I think that the key in any of these new energy sources, whatever they are, there has to be enthusiasm to get the hump, and there has to be excitement and potential. At the same time, I do think we need to be cautious, and where you get something where there's a lot of hype, there are going to be some people that aren't going to be able to deliver. So I think the key is to figure that out.
Look at AI, the current buzzword. Everything is AI. AI is not anywhere near as powerful as they're all making it sound, at all. And the other thing is, it's extremely expensive to run AI server farms and this and that. And frankly, what they're doing is just rehashing existing content that's owned by somebody else. There's no original content going on. It's, remember, what was it?
Well, it depends, I think, what kind of AI we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about the natural language AI that creates stuff. And then, I mean, again, I totally agree with you. It depends on what your data source is. And if you've got bias data source, and you're just looking for patterns, where's the quality control in that?
There isn't. That's the problem. There really isn't. It's all put together. Well, you heard that Sony recently awarded this guy, I forgot where he was from, may have been Scandinavia, I'm not sure. But they awarded him Best Picture of the Year. It was an AI-generated picture. And then Sony, when they found out, they explained that was a gross mistake. I don't know how that happened. And I've heard others say, no, this was probably all on purpose to bring attention to what they're doing with Sony and other things. I think it might have been just to generate a little bit of attention, because the picture that it generated, I saw a copy of it. It was just like, that? It wasn't even a good picture. It wasn't a good photo. Why would you call that the best photo of the year? So, and the guy claims, the one who actually generated it said, well, to me it was a test to see how far I could get with this. And he went pretty far. But that whole thing may have just been a scam, just to get attention to everybody. Everybody talk about it. Now they want Sony products. So
Well, right.
yeah,
Yeah, like of deep fakes, I think of the Kardashians.
fakes. Yeah, yeah.
They like, apparently they have so many like custom beauty filters that like nobody really knows what they. Well, obviously I'm exaggerating, but like if you were to see the Kardashians in person, you would be shocked because it wouldn't look anything like.
No, no, Gorgon. Anyway, anyway. Well, I guess we're about out of time, and it's an interesting subject in many ways because it kind of leads you to other directions and other places, and of course, there's a time thing involved too. When will they do all this? Oh, I hear all these things. No more cars by the year 1930. 2030. Yeah. And what are you going to do? We're all going to live in 15-minute cities? I don't think so. Um, and by the way, some of these people pushing for all this are probably going to be dead by then. They're really old. And you just go, I don't know. Even though life before wasn't that bad, what's coming up doesn't look any good. So, it's hard to pine for the past, but when it's getting this weird soon, I don't know. It's just sort of scary. But now the geothermal sounds interesting. If,
Yeah,
like you said, if they can get it all working, that'd be cool.
exactly. I mean, the idea of it, the promise of it is really fascinating. The systems are complicated, and they do rely on
Mm-hmm.
really, really good heat exchangers,
Right.
lots of chemical program scale, and they do actually require heat. This is the other thing too.
Right.
It's not just about generating heat; they require heat to lift the and pump and all sorts of things. So, is it net positive? In some cases, it's not been in the past.
Right. Right. So that's going to be interesting. And you need heat for everything. Otherwise, it won't cook. Yep. Well, Susan, as always, good to have you on board and nice conversation. And I think we may have some guests next week again. So that'll be interesting. And we'll see where those conversations go. But a pleasure, and have a great weekend. If you're watching the show out there, please subscribe and take a look at it and enjoy it. Write comments below. We will answer them. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks. Bye, Susan.
Bye.
And that's a wrap.